Woo! Still got the name, Dollar Tree. But is that me making the noise in the mic? How can I change that? Drop it. Ah. Well, I may have to. Is that better?
It's not the mic.
Okay. Let's try that one.
Test, test, test.
Swap them out. Check one, check two. Well, we're sounding good so far. Thank goodness it don't sound like me. Okay. Wow, now I gotta figure out how to plug it up. You gotta worry about the demonstrator if he can't figure out how to put the microphone on. But in the meantime, till I get it on, I am LanBrady, same one that was here, I guess in December or whatever. And I'm from the Greensboro area, not originally, but I've lived here for 38 years. So can I be counted as true Greensboro person? Yay! So I'm officially from Greensboro, because I bet nobody in this room knows where Cliffside, North Carolina is, do you?
It's on the side of the cliff.
It actually is. The mill is 5 stories tall. You can enter all 5 from ground level at some point. Seriously, I'm not making that up. But it was 5 full stories. And when they tore that building down, every single piece of it was used, including the 10 million handmade brick. They had people sit there with hammer and chisels to take it apart and clean it up, and it went to Japan to build pagodas. Because the beams and timbers in this building, we were talking about that one, I believe it was you, they were all chestnut or white oak, and they were all cut locally, and most of them were 16 by 30. That was the posts that were in that place. And they were 60 to 80 foot long. That tells you how big the trees were originally. I mean, it's just unbelievable. And anyhow, but you just brought back a good memory when you showed yours up there. Okay, let's get on with the demo. Everybody that's seen me turn, and I actually had somebody ask me at the last demo if I ever turned anything, because I don't put anything in the gallery, and I sit up here and did mineral inlays, and yes, I do turn, for the person that wanted to know. Maybe not very good, but I do turn. The very first thing we do, anytime we're going out to play with our lathe, is do what? Clean it up. Make sure your lathe's in good shape. I just usually use WD-40 a little bit on the bed, and I'm rubbing it in, rubbing it off, whatever you want to call it. You can see it's nasty, even though this thing gets used once a month. I do it back and forth just to get some on that. I'm still, microphone-wise, I'm breaking up a little bit. And then I'll try to get some on this. We're not going to spend a whole lot. Ooh, we don't have a pin back there, so I better be careful how far back I slide that. And we've got that. So next we'll take a look at our tool rest. And tool rest, I normally will dress with a file, and you hold it flat on there and go all the way across. And everybody that's turned on it, you've used a parting tool, you've used something that bounced on here, you've got some light nicks in it. But all we're going to do is remove the high spots. We're not going to go till this is slick or polished or anything. We're just knocking off the high spots. And after 20 or 30 times, it'll be back completely smooth again, so that you can put more nicks into it. But you know that when you get a nick, you're not removing metal. All you're doing is pushing it aside, so it creates a high spot and a low spot. Okay, that's pretty usable. I'm happy with that. Now, this is one thing I don't like to do, is show something that you can't buy anymore. But this is something, if you find one for sale on eBay or Facebook Marketplace or something, get one. And all it does, it's called the green weenie. Why they named it that, pretty obvious, it's green. But all it is a Morse taper number 2, and it lets you clean out your spindle on both ends. And
For those of you that are not very computer savvy, be very careful when you do a search for the green weenie.
yeah,
Just giving you a little hint.
totally understand.
Some of them have never come back from that search.
Yeah. There's no way for you to see it in the camera, but there's actual flakes of metal. So somebody has put something in here that scratched it up. There's a lot of gum, which is just black looking soot that's built up on there. But anyhow, I'm sort of shocked to see some actual shiny metal that come off on this, because this is just flexible rubber, plastic, whatever, but it needed cleaning. So
I have a Morris Taper 3 if anybody's interested.
they do.
I have one.
Oh, okay.
I
So
ordered it thinking it was a 2. They said it was a 2, but they sent me a 3, and then I said I needed a 2. We don't have those.
oh God.
So they're pretty hard to find, but I
Yeah.
have it. They didn't make me send it back, so I have a Morris Taper 3.
So if you have a one-way lathe, you need what he's got.
Still stuck on one.
Yeah. Okay, good to go. We're all cleaned. Our lathe is ready to go. We're going to keep it pretty simple tonight. I think he mentioned we're going to do multi-axis, but this is one of the simplest multi-axis you're going to find. We're going to make a water scoop. It's used for things other than dipping water, but most things that I make are used by reenactors. Anywhere from the Renaissance fairs to the Revolutionary War reenactors, Civil War reenactors. They like this kind of stuff because it's handmade. They want me to do a spring pole lathe demo, and I am not about to do that. So that's work where I come from. Those people that do that, more power to them, but I don't think I will. But I am going to, like I said, stick with the simplest of tools that I use tonight. I am going to use a Steb spur drive, and this is a safety center, but the teeth have been sharpened along the rim. And the center is spring loaded, so when you mount something on there, it presses it in. It don't just dig a hole into it. And that's my drive center. Live center, you've seen before. A lot of the old machines, they used a dead center that was shaped like this, and I don't like to do that because you have to continually wax it, clean it, whatever. Okay, my safety glasses before we get much further. Those are the secondaries, just in case they break. I was doing a demo one time and I was away from home, and the stem broke off of these safety glasses, and I was stranded because I use bifocal safety glasses. What was I going to do? Because I couldn't see it. So ever since that day, that's my spare that I keep, and it's always on my head just in case. And if you're out riding down the road and you hear the call of a chainsaw that you need to stop for, you've got safety glasses too. Okay. But it's definitely a bifocal. Okay. Let's make a maple one tonight. Let me show you basically what we're going to make. This is a bigger version than what we're making. And when I say multi-axis, you can see it because nothing is square on there. The divots were cut on the lathe. The crooked tail was cut on the lathe. The ball was cut on the lathe. It was hollowed on the lathe. So there's no question there was multiple axes involved in this, but they're really simple.
Did you say multiple accidents?
Yeah, that's been known to happen too. But it's something that I saw when I was 5 years old. And I think I've told some of you before, I was the apprentice for a wood turner when I was 5 years old, literally. That was my summer vacation with my grandparents, and Grandpa run cotton gins. And he didn't want to spend his day watching me, so he assigned me to the machinist. Believe it or not, the machine shop was considered the safest place in a cotton gin. Hard to believe, but it was. So the gentleman's name was Robert. I spent my summer following Robert around. Now, when the work I did, I was not turning. I was his sander. Robert had multiple machines set up in there. He would turn what he was going to turn. I sanded while he moved on to the next machine. But that was the apprenticeship for me. Luckily, in the fall, my parents decided I needed to go to kindergarten, so that was the end of my apprenticeship.
Turn that over so you can see the grip.
Oh. We're not going to do the grip tonight. I can show you how to do it, but it's a nice little detail to have added on to it. But I didn't turn after that. It was 40-some years later, I started getting interested in turning again, and I wanted to know, hey, I want to make some of those scoops that Robert made 40-some years before. Well, fortunately, when I joined this club, one of the first demos that I ever saw was that man right there making a water scoop. And he made it straight handled. There was no multi-axis to it, other than he had a jig to turn it around and do that. I thought, well, that's the start of what I want. And so I started doing them. I copied what Bob was doing. But there was still something missing. And then we had a demonstrator from Virginia, Barbara Deal. She came in, and then she showed us how to move stuff on the axis right there and get a different cut. And I thought, that's how that little tail was made. That's how this little thick spot right here was made. I thought, how can I add that to it? So I went home. It took me 20 tries or more before I did it. So I took Bob's scoops, and I took what Barbara did. You know, I had to simplify it. My mind does not work like that lady's mind works. She is way too complicated for me. But I can make it simple, and it worked like a champ. So between the two of them, I could duplicate what I had seen 40 years earlier. Now I've bored you to death.
I want to point out, we've got Barbara Dill's demo recorded about 3 different times she's been here.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
You ought to watch it, I mean, as a challenge, just to take a look at what she does, because not that you should copy what she was doing, because some of it is very complicated. But
The thing about it is, she's written a book too.
yeah,
And you talk about trying to figure out what she's doing. Well, you figure it out by watching it over and over and over.
yeah, you can. Now, once you take this, my mind obviously goes in different directions. So I experiment. I made a little shorty. It's the exact same thing, except it's got an extremely short handle. But it works out really good if you want to use it as a cup or whatever. And led to other things where I made Scandinavian bowls. I copied that. Same principles. And then I wanted to venture in, well, what could we make a coffee cup? And yes, you can. And stuff that I'm showing you is what I never got rid of because it's off quality. Most people bring their best stuff to show you. I'm the exact opposite. I brought stuff I couldn't dare give to anybody or let them use. But it's an idea. That's what I'm going for tonight. Okay? I'm going to pass them around, let everybody see them. And one last I thought was pretty good. I tried to copy what Mike Mahoney does on making his little coffee cups that he does carving, but I wanted to turn them. So just found a way to cut that off, you know, made 2 balls joining, cut it off, and then drilled 2 holes into it, so they work. If you would, just pass them around. Thank you, Steve. And if you drop them, you're not going to hurt anything, and if you do, I'm not out anything, so don't worry about it. And there was one last one, which I didn't bring the tools to show, but I got bored with the handles sometimes, and I thought, well, let's put a spiral onto it. And I didn't want to do just a plain old barley twist, so what I did is I marked it off, the 4 spaces for a barley twist, but only routed 3 of them. And it left a great looking little twist on there. You made the 3 little tiny grooves, and then one great big, it looked just like a grapevine twisted around it, instead of a manufactured barley twist. So anyhow, it's just another useless something to do when you're playing in the shop. Okay, I promise not to send any more around. Let's make something. Well, I could show you the tools that we're going to use. Believe it or not, spindle roughing gouge. This looks a little bit different than your spindle roughing gouge, I do feel sure. But if you'll look and use your imagination, it's exactly the same. It's just not curved. Doesn't have as much of a U shape. It's got more of a flat shape to it. And the reason I do this is because my great uncle was a gunsmith, and he used a tool just like this to make some of his long guns, where he had to turn stocks and things like that. So I had to copy what he was doing. And my normal spindle gouge, too, I'm putting my finger there just as a reference. I use a larger spindle gouge than what you probably use, and you've already put 2 and 2 together. This started out as a spindle roughing gouge, and I just knocked the corners off of it and made my own large spindle gouge. And not as much, but we are going to use a skew. Now, my skew, zoom out just a little bit if you would, Steve. You can see is a different shape than what you're used to seeing as a skew. The whole stock is tapered. It's relatively thin. It is rounded on bottom and on top. And this is a German design, and it works real well because other than just traditional skew techniques that you do, you can make this one an extension of your arm and use it in one hand. And that comes in real handy. It'll surprise you how often you will do that. Let's see, what else do I have? Standard Badan, and this is nothing, it's not square, it's a trapezoid. And I don't use it like the man that invented it used it, which he used it like a skew. I use it upside down, and to me it's the best 3/8 inch scraper you'll ever find. Because you think about it, 3/8 of an inch is a number you use a whole lot. Specifically making tenons, because the depth of your jaws are 1/2 inch and you don't want them hitting bottom. So if you'll use a 3/8 inch, you've got measurement built into it already. And you've got something that you know you can measure at any one given time. And if you need to make like a 1 inch wide tenon on a leg, well, you can do it with that. Just make a couple of passes. Okay. And I will use just a standard scraper. And there's nothing there. It's just a round nose scraper, red handled, and I can't advertise for Harbor Freight. I didn't make any promises about Harbor Freight. This came out of their set. They're a professional set. And the reason I bring it up, because they're closing out their professional set right now. They've got them on sale for half price. Those 8 tools are $45. And if you get the 15% coupon, $39 for 8 turning tools. Now, the purists in this room who think Doug Thompson is absolutely the only option that you can get on the face of this earth are screaming inside right now. They can't stand that I said that. And I somewhat agree with them. Thompson are better tools. These are good, till you get the experience under your belt. If you're gonna have to learn how to sharpen, how to use or whatever, nothing better on earth than to have something like this. And the only difference I see is I did have to tune them up, and you can't see it, but I did polish the surfaces on the tools that I got like this, and which Thompsons are polished already.
I'm assuming it is high-speed steel.
It definitely is high-speed steel. And it's thicker metal too, so they're good tools. Get the red handled ones, don't get the blonde handled ones. I don't know that they're on sale, but you can't beat it for $45 a set of 8 of these right here. This one has been in my toolkit for nearly 20 years now. So it's been everywhere, it's been beat and banged, and it's still working just fine.
I priced a 1-inch round nose scraper from Thompson a couple of months ago.
Yeah,
No handle, $175.
yeah. And this one's $6. So, I've already made it clear, I love great quality tools, and when that one wears out, it'll be replaced with a Thompson or something similar. But until that point, that one meets my needs. Another tool that I use, and everybody knows their depth for drilling, and all I did was buy a chuck, a drill chuck that's from the place I'm not allowed to say. No, this came from Harbor Freight, actually. And that's all it is a chuck. It's a 1/2-inch chuck. And all I did was take one of my handles that I made, because everybody likes to make their own handles, and I just drilled the hole, and I think it's 3/8 inch fine is the thread that threads into that chuck. This is a handy little tool if you just want to make one for yourself, because you can use this as a turning tool handle, and you can fit multiple size tools in there. So, great option. I use it for my drill. Okay, I think I've worn myself out. Nope. Got one more. Well, we'll do that when we get to it. Okay, let's start something, because everybody wants to see shavings on the floor. Okay, we're going to do just like everybody else will do. When you're putting something between centers, and I've already marked it, but you can buy the plastic gauges that let you center, or you can just go corner to corner like that and do it. And again, from a Harbor Freight tool. Well, it's turned into a Harbor Freight commercial, hasn't it? Okay, I will use, this is a machinist punch, but it works great on your wood also. It just does the little spring-loaded punch into it.
I had one of those, I never go to use it like that, I had just a little pick that.
Yep, got it too. But I don't want to take a hammer, I don't want to beat on it, and I don't want to hit on my lathe. This does a wonderful job doing that. Okay, we've covered what tools we were using. It's time to make shavings and throw them at Bob. And see, the holes are there. You can see weight-wise, though, the wood is not centered at all. Well, I'm not going to worry about it, because the size of my scoop is not that critical. This is a piece I've had in the shed for quite a few years, probably 8 to 10 years. It came from a gentleman that's passed away now. He used to sell wood, and he was at every symposium that you've ever been to up until the last one that we had. Okay, line it up, make sure it's clear, lock it in place. And if you're wanting to make sure that you're as straight as possible, all you have to do is sight through across the tool rest with one eye and make it match the line on the bed down in there. And I now know that's straight.
We have an outage.
Oh no! Please stand by. Technical difficulty. I am not singing. Anybody else want to sing while they're? Normally when something goes wrong or whatever, hey, I'm back.
There we go.
Back on there.
Whatever you did, just fixed it.
Whatever he did in November.
Is it still recording?
Yeah, I did.
Okay. You know, when they come back from commercial break, they always do a quick review of where they were at. So we got the wood all lined up. It's between centers. It's just a hair off balance. We're good to go. I reset the lathe after it's ambrosia maple. That was one thing about that Mike did with his wood to sell. He dips the entire piece in wax, not just the end grain, which preserve-wise works great, but it also keeps you from seeing defects or anything in the woods too. So it was a trade-off. Yep, but you know, he was the professional selling wood, so I am not the person to argue with him. Okay, since we know for a fact this piece is off balance, I'm gonna start at 0 and I'm gonna speed it up until I feel this machine start to wobble. And it's wobbling in the low 900 range. So I know I'm gonna go with that. And now, don't wanna turn the cord, so I'm gonna try to renegotiate. And I'd always double check to make sure things are tight. Okay, I do it the same way everybody else does with your normal spindle rough and gouge. You come up, you hit the bottom of the tool, lift the handle. I see dust. I'm using my body to make my cut. I made one pass all the way across and back, so I know I'm good. So I'm gonna square myself up because I know I'm gonna do the wood turner's dance now, just to clean this up. And you'll see roughing it, I've got my fingers weighting it down on the tool rest, and I've got 2 fingers up in the air. That's protecting my face a little bit. And the purist in the room, I know you're saying, put a face mask on. Not going to, so I do believe in protecting my eyes, but I'm a very claustrophobic person. The face shield for me is disastrous. You'll notice the shavings. By being this wider tool, it takes a wide cut that's shallow, so it doesn't quite get as big of catches or stops and things like that. And the stops will be non-dramatic if we do get them, because we're using that spur type drive. It'll just stop the wood rather than throwing it off and hitting Bob. I'd hate to mess up that pretty hairdo. So I'll just throw some shavings at him. Okay, we probably could speed up a little bit. Well, not near as much as I wanted to. So I'm gonna be a little more aggressive. And even though I'm using the same basic techniques, I'm taking bigger bites. And if you take notice of the shavings, they're pretty big. I changed my overhand grip, because when I'm taking the big ones, I'm throwing them that way instead of at me. Okay, I've got all my weight to my left foot, so I need to stop, spread out. Okay, I made one pass. There's no question it's not completely round yet. I'm going to go back and I hope some of you are watching the shavings, because we all know how to put the tool on top of it to make sure it's round. But if you'll also notice with this particular tool, the shavings make little wheels, and they'll roll off of the lathe once it gets completely round. I'm round here, but I don't seem to be round there. Let's stop and see if that's really true. Nope, I'm not round there, but I am round here, but there's a knot. That's what I was feeling. Okay, we're close enough. Still a pretty piece of wood. And I'm gonna make one clearing cut across there. Notice how much I was able to snug that up. I don't use this to tighten it down. I like to be able to reach over here and just snug it at any time, because when you're using green wood, and even though this is dried for quite a few years, it is green wood. I'm gonna try to take somewhat of a smoothing cut all the way across there. You can tell because I was gauging myself, I'm thicker here than I am down here. So let's start back at the small side. You see the little curly cues dancing off of it? Isn't that cool? I like it. Okay, we've got a good piece. Now, oops, I forgot to get out my dividers, didn't I?
Lan,
Yes, sir.
most of the time you did that by moving full length along your piece.
Yep.
But for a little while there, you were taking bites off the end and taking one and then another and then
Yep.
another and then another.
Call,
Is there any particular reason why you do one over the other?
I get lazy sometimes, and that way I don't have to move. I just sort of have to flick my wrist. It takes a much bigger bite and it digs deeper. So I can get across there rather than spending the next 20 minutes just doing the dance. Because if I get aggressive enough to move it, and I can with this particular tool, but it's just easier for me to take the bites when I'm roughing like that. When I want to do a smoothing cut, all the way from one end to the other is the way to go. Because anybody can take a look at that. This particular piece of wood right now, if we were sanding that, starting with 120, maybe 180, you would be good to go straight off of the spindle roughing gouge. In my book, that's pretty good. But anyhow, we're going to measure the diameter. Okay, we got it. I didn't have to adjust anything because I didn't move any metal. I'm going to lay it on here and I'm going to make 2 marks. Can you see those? I didn't bring a pencil, I don't think. I've got a magic marker. Let's see if that'll work. Okay, you can see where I'm at now. Now, basically, I think Greg mentioned something about the 1/3 rule. Well, we do that, of course, in wood turning. So I know, just standard-wise, my scoop should be about that long altogether, with this being the ball, that being the handle. For my hand, knowing that it's going to have a little hook down here and little doodad here, that's probably about right. So let's go for that size. I like that. And while I've got the marker out, let's see, I better square that up or it won't mark. And again, I can use my Badan, or I could use a skew. Oops, it slipped a little. But all I did was square it up. I maybe squared too much. So anyhow, we're still gonna go with it. Okay, where'd I put my marker? Right here. If you put it back in the same place every time, you can find it. Okay, I'm just putting a mark there. Right now, that's an arbitrary mark. I just wanted it on there. And as I secretly move stuff off of the bed of the lathe while you're not looking, right, Bob? Okay. No, you didn't. It never was there. Okay, I've made my marks. We know where the ball's at. And my bedan, I'm going to pick it back up. And now I'm going to mark out some things to start with. I don't have to go any particular depth. I don't want to go more, I want to leave at least 1 inch of wood right here. So it's not critical how much I do. Like I said, just at least 1 inch. And then we know that this is going to be the end of our scoop. And should we go ahead and mark it? Let's go ahead and give ourselves some room in case we want to make it longer. And all I'm doing is setting up my parameters to work from. And I've got plenty of room there, so I could make that a little smaller. That's still 1 1/4 to 1 1/2 inches. Okay, got a good reference right there because the end of that drive, which you can't see on camera, is 1 1/4 inches. So I already know what 1 1/4 inches looks like. I've got a reference point, just sighting across there. I don't want to get out anything to measure it with. Every time I get close, that's what some of the feedback is. I turn my head sideways. Okay, I'm going to switch to my spindle gouge, and I'm also going to mark, and I'm going to estimate what's the center of this ball. Did I hit it? Sure. I think that's close enough. Okay, I obviously want to make this round, so I'm just going to start by removing some of the waste wood. So even though I'm making roughing cuts, I'm still trying to start my rounding just a little bit, just so that I get the feel, and it's making nice long shavings. Do y'all not enjoy that, just making long shavings to throw on the floor? I mean, it don't get much cooler. Okay, I'm not quite to the center yet. But it's looking fairly round. Bless you, whoever sneezed. At least you didn't yawn. Okay, my cut was a little hard, so this is obviously too big, so I'm going to give myself a little bit of relief. That's all I'm doing is just so I can get in there. That gave me a little bit of vibration, which I really didn't want. But still turning fairly round. Maybe my eyesight's that bad, but it's looking pretty good. What is it, Bob? Am I round?
No, it's just lovely.
Oh, it ceased being round. It's more of an ellipse now. If I can cover that up, nobody will know it. Oh man, after all that good work, bragged on myself, and then it looks like an ellipse now.
You make it an yesterday.
Neither one of you better give up your day job.
We only have partial that went through.
That's right. Well, you can see that I'm making more of an onion now. I was doing so good there for a little bit, then I bragged on myself and it went all to pot. Okay, I'm going to use my skew as a scraper. And the reason I'm doing that is because it is a straight edge, so it lets you round as long as you keep moving so that you don't leave a flat spot. Bob knows I am a master of leaving flat spot on round objects. Now, we had an instructor in our class that she was such a good artist, she could tell anything, and I could not see the flat spots. And she would spot mine just instantly. And she was right every time. But this skew works similar to a negative rake scraper, of which I don't have. And the floor's getting slick, so it's piling up a little too much. So I'm just trying to, and if you don't get it completely round, don't worry about it. Just do try to get your flat spots out of your curve. Very obvious, I've still got one down there fairly deep that I'm not doing too good at getting out. There it went. There's a high spot in the curve up here at the top. Okay, I'm not going to spend all day doing that. Now, this is one thing that you do sand as you go, because once you move it off axis, you never have a smooth surface to come back to. So now I'm just, well, basically giving myself some relief to get down into it. And I want to be somewhat of a sharp end point right there. It don't have to be real sharp, but somewhat. And you can make this section where my finger's at either tapered or flat. It's up to you. I'm going to leave it just slightly tapered. And so it would be at this point that you do just a little bit of sanding in that area right there. Now, I'm not going to bore you to death with sanding to death. I have packets. Let's see, Jim, do you have sandpaper for sale anymore? I think it was 12 or 13 years ago, I bought the full set of packets here, and I cut them all into 2.5-inch squares and been using off of them ever since.
$8 a box.
This is some of the best sandpaper I've ever seen. We organized them into the correct taper of grits so that you can build upon them. And just quick lesson, everybody knows how to choose their grits, because you used to, back in the 70s, you could buy coarse, medium, and fine. And then they came out with the actual grits that they gave to you, and they all told you don't skip grits. It'll mess your work up. Well, that's when they started making, in between the grits, grits. So you could now buy 60, 80, 100, 120, 150, 180, 200, 220, 240, 280, 300, 320, 340, 400, and the list goes on and on. 118. The secret is one grit to the next is 50% more than what you had before. So if what you're going to start with is 80 grit, the next one you need to go to is 80 plus half of that, 40, so it'd be 120. So let's do the same thing again. 120 and 60 would be 180. 180 and 90 would be, what, 240? 270? Okay, I used 240, so I backed up a little bit, and on and on and on. So, but I use 80, 120, 180, 220, 320, 400. Magically, it's what we got, isn't it?
Something like that.
Yep, that's the very same thing. I'm not going to bore you to death with sanding, but I have my packet that starts with the 80, 120, 180, and I try to keep them in order, but I'm going to do just the 80 as far as sanding, because I just heard it. It don't sound good on the microphone even. And all I'm sanding is the ball and that little part, whatever you'd call it, the start of the neck, whatever. Okay, but obviously the 120 would be next. We would just keep progressing through, and once I get through with those, and since this is a tool that will be used and will make contact with your insides, we don't want to get aggressive and use odd finishes or anything, because everybody's going to debate it with you. That's not a food safe finish. So I can't argue with them, because food safe in this country just means you've paid $20,000 to the FDA and provided them the research, and they certify that they agree with what you just said. That's pretty expensive to somebody that may sell 3 bottles in a year. So you're not going to do that. So what I use just on stuff like this is a mixture of candle wax and mineral oil.
What kind of candle?
Used paraffin.
Yeah, I just like the hobby lobby, you know, that's it.
If you've got paraffin or beeswax, that's fine. Carnauba's a little too hard for doing this. Beeswax is perfect because people like Steve have an endless supply of it. And candle wax, Bob Moffett has an endless supply. So this stuff works really good, and it makes your hands baby soft at the same time.
Is that just candle wax?
That's all it is candle wax and mineral oil.
Yeah, I usually do 2 to 1. I love the wax and put it in.
Okay, I'm not going to sand the whole thing like that, but you can come back and, let's see, I didn't bring any, I don't want to mess up my good sandpaper, but I thought I had some that was just plain old off the wall cling spore paper. I don't seem to have a single piece of it when I need it. Nope, I don't. I thought I had some. But anyhow, so this stuff, you can use it to wet sand. Wet sand doesn't necessarily mean water. You can wet sand with the wax and the mineral oil as well. So like I said, all I did was touch it with 80 grit, and I'm just going to stop it so you can take a quick look at it. Looks pretty dang good, just like that. And imagine if I was doing Renaissance festivals or Civil War reenactment or whatever, that's as much of a finish as they want. They don't want me to have a bright, shiny finish on it. They want something that looks handmade. Matter of fact, they want it to look like it was hand carved or whatever. Let's see, we're 8 o'clock, so if I run out of time, holler at me, Greg. Because I tend to talk on, obviously. Okay, this part's finished, we're going to say. Now, I have to decide, because I am going to drill a hole in here at some point. So what point do I want to drill a hole in? This piece looks so dang good, I don't want to drill a hole anywhere. I mean, it's gorgeous. It really is.
Right there.
Right here.
Right there, yeah.
Turn it right there.
Okay, I'm going to lose this beautiful little art, but
But all the other stuff on the sides are still gonna be there, right?
I like your decision. You have chosen wisely, Grasshopper. So we now know where we're going to hollow from. So that is an important mark to remember. So in order to make that happen, here's one of our first multi-axis that we're going to move off of. And I drew that circle so that I know my imaginary line that I made from there. And I'm putting the point onto that circle that I drew. And you can now see that we are quite a bit off. So we know right away we're going to make some speed changes.
So what did you do? You just shifted the.
I just shifted the whole body down on this one side
You shifted the tails.
with the mark up. See, you can't see my X, but there's an X right here that Jason said wisely that that's what we should
Okay.
drill our hole in later. So I just moved it straight down,
You just went straight down.
whatever distance I like.
So that the handle's not coming straight out, it's gonna come out on the angle.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I personally, again, you've heard this clue before, I like 3/8 of an inch because it's a reoccurring theme in our wood turning. Okay, I'm going to snug it up there. Turn my speed back to 0. Put my tool rest where I would like to have it. That's a pretty good place right there. Okay, you can see the whole thing's wobbling, and we're ready to start. I'm in the low 800s. That's as fast as I could go, and it would be wobbling. Again, I'm going to try my largest tool that I have because it removes the most. Chances are I'm going to have to switch back to my big spindle gouge. I'm going to take light cuts, and it's to your best interest if you have a light somewhere in here shining down because you're looking at shadows. And I'm going to go to right there where my taper is. That's what I'm going to consider my headstock stop for right now. And remember where we made that cut, all I did was knock some off here so that it wasn't hitting me. Now I'm going to consider this, which is the end of my scoop. And me standing behind it, you can probably look through and see it on that green background. There's a ghost image and then there's a wood image that you're seeing. We need to remove the entire ghost image between my two fingers right there. You see the curly cues bouncing off? This takes so long, I normally ask the audience if somebody will tell a joke, but Bob got to volunteering to tell jokes, and he tells such bad jokes, I just quit asking. Solid wood, you hear it? You hear the tone change? Now I'm gonna make several of my cuts from the headstock towards the tailstock. And that's just because it's easier not to go back and forth when I'm going from solid wood to wood, air, wood, air. Plus I'm trying to define my handle size also. So I try to think of the person that's going to be using it. And this is somewhat of a long handle because remember I made the first mark and then moved down there? Let's go back to our original mark. Let's shorten that handle a little bit. That was a cut I didn't like. It wasn't smooth. But look at the doggone shavings we're making. Isn't that fun? I like those. Okay, I'm getting to the point that this tool is too big to make a good smooth cut right there. So I'm going to switch to my spindle gouge. I bet I could speed it up a little bit even. That's not too shabby. I'm still 900 RPMs. And I'm using somewhat of a pivot right now with my whole body. I'm anchoring it, my wrist on the bed, on the back side, of course, and just using my body to create the curve there. That didn't work. So just take a bigger bite. Let's do that again. Those of you that can see the ghost, you just want to make sure that you don't hit the ball. But that's a fairly decent curve up to that point. Okay, that handle's a little bit big, but it's the same motion over and over and over, so I'm not going to waste any more time. But I want you to see the money shot because you're going to see, look at the difference it made right there. You see we got a lot of material still on the top, and we're about to run out at the bottom. That's what we wanted. That's where we were creating that image. That image is not a good word. That's where we created the transition, multi-axis bevel. All of those words are much better. Okay, I'm going to come from the other direction and just try to make the two meet. And remember, let's see, let's go ahead and remove this so I don't forget where my handle ends. And I'm going to practice some of my rounding off while I'm at it, because this stuff's in my way. So see, I am cutting a lot of air. Matter of fact, I'm cutting nothing but air wood, air wood, air wood up to that point. And I want it to end right there. So let's go the other way. Make it start meeting up there. Did you hear it hit my tool, this waste wood over here? How many of you noticed the tailstock unscrewing itself just a little bit? So I'm going to snug it back up. Matter of fact, I did that so that the weighted part of it's on this side, so that any vibration is going to cause it to tighten up instead of loosen up. Because when I had it on this side, you saw it loosen up. So now it's going to cause it to tighten. my advantage. Okay, okay. Right there is where I'm wanting it to end. That's what I originally drew up. So let's keep removing stock. Hearing a lot of vibration, but it's not there, so I don't know where it's coming from, but it's still vibrating. All I'm doing is getting more waste out of my way. Ooh, was that a catch? I've heard of them, I've just never seen one before.
I suppose you're gonna tell us she's also never joined the funnel club.
With the same truthfulness I said that, sure. Okay, I'm still just removing waste because it's in my way. Okay, we're still hitting air wood up here at the top, which I'm trying to get it down to solid stock. And we'll try and get my angle because I'm trying to make the backside of it curve. I don't like flat spots. So you can see how high I've got this handle against my chest. Tool rest is too high. That's why it's that way. I should lower it, but I'm trying to make as few motions as possible. So I'm making the adjustment. Aha. Still getting that vibration. Don't want to go too far. This has been a good solid wood, so I can go down, say, 1/2 inch thickness there left on it without too much trouble. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. I'm liking what that's looking like, so now I'm going to assume this is my handle diameter, so I've got to take this down to where it meets. I want this to be a nice curve feeding into it. So I'm going to get it. That looks pretty good right there. There's still a little bit of bounce in there, so that's obviously not wood all the way. Ooh, almost got a catch on that one. It's round, so all I've got to do is get this handle, and if I would use a shorter tool rest to where I could get in there, it would be better. Shavings in the mouth. That's normally where Bob will fuss at me for not wearing the face shield. That's why you got face shavings in your mouth. Now, Bob and I turn together on Thursdays and Fridays over at Chapel Hill in the club. We can come in there and have a good time, turning, make fun of other people or each other and whatever. So. Well, let's try another tool, even though I said I wasn't going to use a whole bunch. So now I'm going to break out my skew just to even this up a little bit. That makes it look a whole lot better, don't it? That's where you're supposed to agree with me. Yeah, it does. still gonna have to come back and blend it in perfectly together.
Maybe a belt sander.
Belt sander? It's a thought. Okay, we're trying to make a fine cut, which I didn't. I made an almost catch. Okay. For tonight, that handle is not as thin as you want it. You still want it to be a comfortable grip, but for demo purposes, let's stop there, okay? For the handle. Again, we're gonna sand, and even though you're gonna do all your sanding, I'm only doing 80 grit. And you can see I'm gonna sand from here to right there. And yes, my finger got hot. I was being overly aggressive with my sanding. Okay, let's put a little bit of finish on that. Now, I don't know how many of you have ever watched Carl Jacobson turning on YouTube. Back before Carl got rich and famous as a wood turner and all, he used to turn on an old beat up Delta lathe. He made some of the greatest training videos back then, and he's taken them all down. I don't know why he wants you to get used to his new stuff, but his original stuff was wonderful for training.
Probably sponsored by a new tool company.
I mean, I know he is, that's true, but I don't know why he would take them, all the old stuff down like that.
Not using their tools.
Still,
It's stupid, I agree, but
me as a consumer, I'm missing out on a lot of good education because he talked through everything and he did such wonderful, limited amount of tools turning in anybody. They were all really good. Now let's stop and take a look at it. Well, it's not bad, and I don't like, apparently I didn't get enough of an angle to cut that off. So I'm obviously gonna have to, we got our X marks the spot right here. Let's go back to our original mark. Just move it back up. Whoops. And see, it is a lot of offset there. So what I'm gonna come in and recut this backside. Get in as close as I can. I'm happy with that. And I'm gonna go with the detail gouge on cutting this backside because it's so far off right now. And since I've moved things, I'm gonna start back at 0. Wow, it's centered enough. I'm at 1300 and got room to go.
Looks like it's almost all goes from here.
Yeah, it does to me too. I don't have enough light to see my image. Okay.
Piece of paper.
Oh man, shine from up down.
Steve, lay this on the. That help?
Let's see. That right there is perfect. I can see again. Sorry, Steve. That's probably the last cut I can make on it. And it just dawned on me I forgot to bring a saw, so I maybe not be able to cut this off from that angle. Yes, that did exactly what I wanted. Now I've got an angle there. That's what I wanted. Thank goodness I stopped, because I was going to run out of wood before I got through it because I couldn't see it. Okay, we're going to break that off, which you shouldn't do, but if I'd had enough light,
Hold this up for everybody.
yeah, it would have looked a little more dainty. Thank you, Steve. I appreciate that. Now I'm ready to cut this off. And you can see, even though I'm on that original axis, there is some wobble. So even though this was dry wood, it has moved. Okay, I don't want it to break off. If you have a saw, this is the perfect time to use it. Uh-oh, he got a hint that he might have a saw. Did he? Don't worry about it, Steve. If you don't see it, I'm going to break it on the back side. It's, like I said, it is a demo piece. I'm going to go ahead and try to cut through on this side. Probably a good thing to slow the lathe down before you make the final cut. I'm going to actually loosen up on that so that if it does do any sort of compression, it won't explode. Aha, there's where it broke off. Stop it. Now turn your back. Nobody's supposed to see this part. This is where you break out your power sander and round sand that end also. So if you ignore my mistake there, we've got a good looking scoop. Let's see the best angle on the TV, because you've got a multi-axis thing right here, a multi-axis thing right here, and now we've got to hollow it out. Would you hand that back to Bob? Thank you. Okay, I used to use PVC pipe to mount this in. I had a jig that fit right on there, and knockout bar. Do what? Let's see. There it is in the box. And you always cup it like that. Don't let the point hit you, and don't let it fly across the room. Just tap it out. And of course, self-ejecting on this end. And if necessary, you can use your knockout bar there, but hopefully it's not necessary. Okay, like I said, well, I'm kicking stuff I don't want to step on. I used PVC pipe as my chuck to mount it in multi-axis. Worked great, but you had to make your scoop exactly 2.75 inches, or 2.5 inches, or 2.25. Those were your only options. Well, I didn't like that, so I kept looking, and I found some buttons that go on a coal jaw that were extended in length. And rather than put them on a chuck, the screws that came with them fit into your jaws. So I just run them straight into the chuck. And now I can make any size scoop I want to. Nim, I bet you didn't know that one. Did I finally give you something you didn't know? Yay, I've been successful. I found something he didn't already know. Okay, let's see, we're going to lock it in place, or semi. And there's our X marks the spot. So we know we're going to drill out there. And I am using tummy bar jaws, or tummy bar chuck. And I've got my X pointing straight up. The reason I use tummy bar jaws is when I started turning, these chucks were $69 a piece, and the 4-jaw with the screw handle in them were $149 a piece. So I could buy 2 of these for the same price, or close to it. Okay, I'm setting it in. You can see my handle is not straight. I wanted it just a little bit crooked. Just, again, I'm adding another axis to it. I don't want to tighten it up too much because these are just aluminum with a rubber coating on them. And very obvious, you can't turn like this. Prove it.
Turn the dial all the way up and turn it on.
Okay, we're in good shape there. Now, remember the drill that we had. We want to make sure that we don't drill all the way through it. So, surprisingly, where I've got that tape is just about right. Now, I maybe ought to turn a flat spot to get that to go in a little easier. And let's use the detail gouge. We're going to slow it back down to 0 again. We're not hitting anything. My side is over here. Don't get on this side. This belongs to the tool, period. Now, I have to reach around, obviously, to turn it on and off. Give it a wide berth. It only needs 6 inches. Give it at least 12.
Sounds like a voice of experience.
Well, the tool rest part definitely was, because in the middle of a demo, I have broke one in half. Again, not a fun experience. Well, there we go. I knew I couldn't get a nibble. Okay, we've got a dimple. That's 800 RPMs. And to drill a hole, I want to be less than 500, and there's 480. Good enough. Let's go with that. Is everything tight? I don't want to take any chances.
So you use this instead of like a Jacob's chuck?
I do. What do you mean like? It is a Jacob's chuck.
I have one mounted in my tail.
You can do it, but yeah, it'd probably be better than tonight to have done that. Normally, I don't miss it that bad. I guess I get nervous when I demo.
Just out of curiosity, why would you not do that with the tail switch?
Showboating. That's the only answer I've got for you. No, I don't normally have that much problem. It's usually right on it. But it's like anybody else. I made a tool. I want you to see how great I am. Okay, deep enough for tonight. Okay, to do my hollowing, I'm going to start with my Badan and then switch to that round nose scraper that we were talking about. For hollowing, I am going to speed it up a little bit. We're getting close to 800. Let's not go any more than that. And you can see I'm way low. So we got to start back at 0 because I'm raising the tool rest. Wow, was that ever off?
Yeah.
Oh well. Okay, go to 0, turn it back on. Respect the side that the tool's on. There's a good chance I'll throw it off since my hole is so far off, so be prepared for some excitement.
Your tool is moving.
Something is. Yeah, look at there. That's not in there. It slipped completely. That's why the hole was not at center. At least that's what I'm going to go with. Look at the hole. It's all the way around there. So, well, not much for bragging on my successful story of using these chucks, is it? Let's start again. See what I did wrong. Never should spin your chuck on, but I just did because something slipped tremendously. And I scarred the side of our piece.
That's why they invented the 60-grit turning tool.
Okay, we've got our X pretty well back at center. Now I'm going to go tighter than I should be going, but obviously I just didn't. Oh, there was a catch in there for some reason. That feels good. Well,
Is the finish on the ball slippery?
I'm sure it is somewhat, but I would love to blame other things, but I think it was just me not tightening it up enough.
I think it's the eclipse.
There's all kinds of things I would like to blame. That hits it, so that's not a good spot to be in. And see, there's a point where it's too much of an angle. Probably is there, but whew, that hole is way off. Let's try it. Nothing like a challenge, is there? Yeah, really. Okay, I don't like that at all because that's into my territory. Well, I am blowing way too much time now. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Have you ever drilled a hole with a spindle gouge?
I'm not real good at it, but I've tried.
Jim, come do it for you.
Yeah. That feels good. What do you say we try it again, y'all? Nope.
Go for it.
Oh, okay. Let's see, go back to 0. Okay, we're using it as a scraper, so we're aiming down. This is terrible because without that hole in the center, Yeah, it'd take me a day and a half at this pace. Let's switch the round nose since that one don't seem to like what I'm doing. This one ain't fond of it either. Something slipped again, didn't it? It's still in place. That hole being so far off. Should have brought some just-in-case tools. Tell you what, I'm going to raise it just a little bit and change my angle down more.
Steve, can you zoom in a bit on that?
I'm not sure that's a good idea. Oh my goodness. All your cuts are towards the headstock. Don't try and come back out. These teeth, these jaws obviously don't have enough holding power for you to put a sideways motion into it. You can hear the vibration. And part of that is me rushing because I want you to see a product. I'm starting to put a death grip on it, and you never should do that. Notice how, even though I'm resting my arm on the tool rest, I'm being real careful not to let it get on the other side. And I'm not cutting back out, I'm just dragging across it so that I'm maintaining my angle. I hit the hole there, that's what that bounce was. It's off to the side.
Even with the handle, or
I will.
just a little bit, because it looks like it's close from here.
No, I still got a long way to go. 5 minutes, that's what I was afraid of. So, see, I've got 1/16 of an inch, Bob. But what I would do, because that's one reason of cutting that multi-axis, so that I can cut into it just a little bit right there. And that'll be as far as I go tonight. So I am going to try and just blend that curve into it. Whoops. I heard solid wood, and I don't like hearing. And when I said solid, I mean solid wood once per revolution.
Sit around again.
And I'm going to go just a little further out because I want you to see how dramatic you can get on that part of it. Because hollowing, listen to the once per revolution. Hope you heard it. Okay, now all you would do is establish your rim and hollow it out. And the part I really wanted you to see is see how overcutting into that multi-axis that I left on there. Can you really tell it or not? Okay, but you can do that and it just invites a very dramatic curve into it. Now, I would square it off with the rim and then continue hollowing from that point on. Okay, and you don't need to see any more of that. We are out of time. I'm sorry I wasted so much time there because I'd like to have done it. But I think you've got the gist of what we're doing. I think everybody in this room can go home and make one of these because they're not that hard. If I come this close to doing it, I know you can do it.
You just have to make a tool or two.
Yeah, well,
Like that thing, or your
well, I
PVC
mean,
pipe.
yeah, that's it. PVC pipe is the best way to start, but you're limited on sizes.
Well, you can fudge that a little bit by cutting
Oh yeah,
slices so, and put a clamp around it.
but not much, not
Oh, not
much. But, okay, sorry I took so long.
Thank you.
Yay, we got through.
All right, well, thank you guys for coming. If everybody could help us.